Street Fighter, as with most fighting games, is home to a wide variety of characters. The point with this intro is utterly inane, but I don't really have anything else to put here. Naturally, some of these characters are going to be more fortunate than others. Obviously, you'd have a hard time trying to find a Street Fighter game without Ryu in it, but some characters have barely been seen at all since their debut. And nowhere is this more prominent than in the Street Fighter III series. Here, Capcom decided to remix the entire roster with a bunch of new faces, for some reason. Technically, they had already pulled this exact stunt with Street Fighter once before. That's because Street Fighter I exists. Technically. In the final version, Third Strike, there were only 5 characters that already existed in canon beforehand. Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Akuma, and Hugo, the last of which is from Final Fight. If you're wondering why him of all characters, it's probably because the main protagonist of the 3 series was Alex, who's based on Hulk Hogan, and Hugo is based on Andre the Giant. The other 15 characters, including the final boss, Guile, the only character I've ever seen be both over-designed and under-designed, were completely new to this game. This is a major factor in why a lot of people were turned off from this game, though not the biggest. Many of these characters have never been seen since, both because of that and the sheer amount of new faces. Now, any one of these could be considered the most unfortunate Street Fighter, especially the lower tier ones, since it's Third Strike. It's both heavily imbalanced and heavily competitive. If you didn't see the thumbnail for this video, you might expect this video to be about 12 or Sean, who are the 2 worst characters in this game, and they both haven't been playable since. But there's one character who I think holds the title for the most unfortunate character in all of Street Fighter, Remy. Now Remy is a somewhat interesting character. I wrote very interesting in the script, but it's Street Fighter. Remy was originally created when Capcom realized Street Fighter III was missing 2 things every fighting game should have: a projectile character and a twink. That's not a joke. I thought I was joking when I wrote that line, but I dug a little deeper. At an interview with Roundtable, they call him Bikei, which is essentially Japanese for twink. So that's something. Thank you YouTube user Scotia8 for finding this, because otherwise I would have never have found this. What the fuck? In addition to being a twink, he is also a super edgelord. He's slightly more complex than that, which aforementioned YouTuber made a video about, but that doesn't mean he's not still a super edgelord. In fact, he's so much of a super edgelord that most people agree that he's based on the fighting game super edgelord, that being Iori Yagami. As far as I know, it's never been stated outright, but his leather jacket, its symbol, his red pants, his long, presumably dyed hair, his in-name only hatred of fighting, and the fact that he is, again, a super edgelord, should definitely be ringing a few bells if you know anything about this guy. He also has another notable influence. He may also be based on the character Cool from the obscure fighting game Fallen Angels. Look at this prototype design for Remy, and now look at Cool from Fallen Angels. Do you think that there might be some sort of resemblance here? Do you think that they might have been inspired? Personally, I don't see it, but, Street Fighter Wiki points out that resemblance could be there. I don't know, I think it is somewhat of a stretch. What's more important here is that Cool has a similar moveset to Guile. Like Remy does. Yes, Remy's moveset is based on Guile's. In the series, that already has Guile. And he's nowhere near as popular as Guile, because he's motherfucking Guile. Which means that any game that has Guile, he probably won't be invited to the party. And Guile appears in every game, because he's motherfucking Guile. Though he wasn't in the Alpha series, but that's because they replaced him with Nash for a hot minute, until they added Guile back in the home version of Alpha 3. The only reason that Remy exists is because they didn't have a Guile-type zoner in 3 yet, so instead of just using Guile, for some reason they gave him a successor. He does have a few more moves over Guile. He has a low fireball similar to Sagat, and he also has this move. It's done by doing a quarter circle backward and then kick, and given that he has both a fireball and a DP move, that technically makes him a Shoto. That's interesting. If he ever shows up again, maybe they'll go a route similar to Nash in 5, making him a motion character instead of a charge character, but I wouldn't count on it. Honestly, it's more likely they'll figure out a way to revive Nash again even though he died twice already. The difference, of course, is that Capcom loves the Alpha series. They do not love Third Strike, at least not as much. The problem is not just that he's just Guile but different, it's also that we have another Guile but different. If you're unfamiliar with Remy, and you misheard me earlier, you might theoretically be thinking, okay, but Guile tends to be pretty good. Does that mean that Remy's good in Third Strike? And the answer to that question is no, but more accurately, no. You see, one of Remy's main problems is that his fireball only hits once, in Third Strike, which makes his zoning pretty much useless. And he's a zoner. That's not the only problem he has, but it's a pretty big one. I'm not that big on the Third Strike meta, but from what I've heard, the consensus is he'd be pretty good in just about any other game. The problem is he won't be in just about any other game because he's just Guile. And the only reason he exists is because Capcom wanted a bunch of new characters, and they put him in a game with Parry. No wonder he's a super edgelord. Okay, but how is he in the other version of Street Fighter III? He isn't. He's only in Third Strike. Okay, then how is he in the Udon comics? He isn't. He's the only playable character in Street Fighter III who doesn't appear in them, even though there's not really a reason for it. What about the spin-offs? Alex was in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. Was Remy in anything? Yes, actually. He was in SNK vs. Capcom. Card Fighters, which is a card game. Is he ever going to show up in a spin-off? Probably not. If we ever get a Marvel vs. Capcom 4, not only is it again more likely for Guile to end up in it, but Capcom vs. kind of stopped being about Street Fighter a while ago. Like 3 didn't even have Ken. It was too busy focusing on other iconic fighting game characters like Bionic Commando or whatever his name was. Now there is exactly one spin-off series where I can most likely see Remy getting invited. Maybe. You see, if Remy is indeed based on Iori Yagami, then you might think it's likely that he could appear if we ever get a third Capcom vs. SNK game, since that's why Dan is likely mandated to show up there. He's a parody of Ryo Sakazaki and Robert Garcia from Art of Fighting, who in turn are XVs of Ryu and Ken. Though it's clear that they're not exactly designed to be a parody. Essentially, it's Capcom poking fun at SNK for quote-unquote borrowing their character designs, even though Capcom's not exactly above borrowing characters themselves. So that means that, due to this, Remy probably has a chance, right? He's based on Iori Yagami, one of SNK's icons, probably. Well, maybe, but... well, if you're making a game with SNK characters in it, SNK characters are going to be in it, and it's already an SNK character who has a similar moveset to Guile, and is also way more popular, especially with the developers. And ironically, they themselves are also based on Remy. Ash motherfucking Crimson. All I need to know about Ash motherfucking Crimson is the reason I'm giving him that moniker. He is without a doubt the most controversial KOF character, and that's the only thing about him that isn't debated. And most likely, he's automatically going to be in the game, Remy or not. And Guile will also automatically be there because again, he's motherfucking Guile. But still, since it's a crossover, Remy could be a nice parallel to Ash on the opposite side of the roster, assuming they'll just put a character in the game to balance the roster out. I don't know why I thought that would happen, but you know, if they do that, I can't really think of anyone else to balance out Ash. Because it's not like Capcom also has a highly controversial creator's pet character who is in turn based on an SNK character. Oh fuck. Anyway, here's something interesting. So Remy is based on both Cool from Fallen Angels and Iori Yagami. And Iori's haircut was based on this Gundam character, who ended up inspiring Yang, who's also from the 3 series. So Yang is technically Remy's uncle. In a meta sense, I guess. And you know what's even weirder? You know who else is based on Cool from Fallen Angels? K-Dash from King of Fighters. And K-Dash in turn ended up inspiring DD, a character from Capcom Fighting All-Stars, a game that never actually came out and is where Ingrid, the lady I mentioned earlier, originated from. Another original character designed for this was Luke, not that one, and his name's supposed to be Cool backwards. And his codename is Fallen Angel, meaning he's almost certainly another XP of Cool from Fallen Angels, which again, is a game that nobody remembers. And the weirdest part? K-Dash was supposed to be a guest character in this as well. It's only in the form of a silhouette. The Street Fighter Wiki points out it could also be Kyo, but Kyo wouldn't do this edgy of a pose, which means there would be 3 XPs of this one character in this one game, one of which is an XP of an XP, and despite this family reunion, Remy still wasn't invited to the party. Or at least, that's what I would have said if it weren't completely wrong. You see, as it turns out, Kyo would do this edgy of a pose. Take a look at this official Capcom interview. They replaced the character's name with asterisks for legal reasons, but there are 3 of them. If this were K-Dash, it would be either 1 or 2, depending on how essential the dash is. This is true both in English and in Japanese with Kyo's full name, since K-Dash is just K-Dash in Japanese. So this is actually Kyo, and everything I just said was wrong. Oops! Now you might have wondered why I went on this tangent and how exactly it's relevant. Anyway, what about Street Fighter VI? What if we ignore all of that theoretical about CVS3 and just focus on the game that definitely exists right now? Could he still be DLC? Well, okay, even if we ignore the fact that again, Guile already exists. Probably not. We haven't gotten a single character from 3 and 6 yet, despite the fact they were supposed to be the new generation. And now the actual new generation is here, the characters from 3 are nowhere to be seen. None! Not even Dudley. Not even Makoto, Third Strike's most popular character. Not even Ibuki, who's gotten in 3 games in a row, and if they did come in someday, is Remy really their highest priority? And higher than the other characters who haven't appeared since 3? To further expand on whatever the hell's going on with Q, maybe Sean could have gone down a dark path after accidentally tapping into the Satsui no Hado after learning Ansatsuken from Ken, and having no way of controlling it since he's an amateur. And since Ken has no experience with this, he's no help here. Maybe 12 could have an upgraded version, 13, who looks almost exactly like 12, but is better in every way, as if it was actually properly designed and not blatantly rushed for the game's release. I promise I'm not trying to make this whole video about KOF. And even if he wasn't at launch, everybody loves Necro, that's just a fact. But Remy? Well, not only does Street Fighter VI already have Guile, it already has an edgy twink, which was Remy's other niche. And this one actually has a connection to a previously existing canon character, that being Balrog, which is more than most characters in Third Strike can say. There's only 2 characters that have a connection to a previously existing Street Fighter character who isn't already in this game, Yun and Yang, and you know what their connection is? They're the nephews of Lee from Street Fighter 1. You know, Lee from Street Fighter 1, you'd remember him. In conclusion, it ain't happening, there are 1,000 reasons why it ain't happening, and it's very unfortunate. I would like to see this character someday. Personally, what I'd do if Remy were to somehow return is I'd give them a new set of pronouns, and I'd make them either non-binary, trans-femme, or both. But it's also what I do with every character. So, yeah. Also, can we acknowledge this prototype piece of Remy art, this other one? Holy shit. Holy shit. Oh my god.